Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we need to have a look at, we need to do that thing where we have a look at the recent sets that have come out, and we say, hang on a second, which one of these should you really be focusing on? Because we're in a really, really exciting time for the Pokemon TCG. We have recently had the release of the special set Scarlet and Violet 151, which is awesome. We, after that, even more recently, have had the release of Paradox Rift, which is a phenomenal set, especially in terms of competitiveness, which is completely turning the metagame on its head. And in the near future, we are actually seeing a release of Paldean Fates, which is another special set, which is again going to be a very, very big deal. And I've had a bunch of questions from you lovely ladies and gentlemen, basically saying, well, hang on a second, Wassy. What's going on here? Which of these sets should we be focusing on? Which ones of these are the best? Well, great news. That's exactly what I'm here for. So we're going to have a look at these sets, we're going to compare them, and I'm going to tell you, if you need to focus on one of these, if you're not going to be going and picking up loads of all of them, which one should you be focusing on? And let's start with what is the oldest of these sets, although not very old at all, Scarlet and Violet 151. This is a great set. A really, really good set. It's one that is really good for collectors, and it's actually sneaky good for players as well, but let's focus on collectors for the time being. The thing is, this set has a lot of stuff that for collectors is a big deal. We've got the first partner Pokemon, your Charizard, your Blastoise, your Venusaur, coming as special illustration rares. And that's a pretty big deal. The Charizard here is actually one of the biggest cards in the Scarlet and Violet era overall. It's just a very, very good card. In terms of value, in terms of people wanting it, it's pretty good. It's over $100 card. Now, there's a pretty big drop-off after that, like Blastoise and Venusaur around $50, but it's still very, very cool. And then, don't forget, we've got whole evolution lines here. So, yeah, we've got the Charizard, but we've also got the Charmander and the Charmeleon that make a nice little evolution line coming in here, which is lovely. And same thing for the Blastoise, for instance. And then in terms of the other special illustration rares, we got things like Alakazam, we got things like Zapdos, we got things like Erica's Invitation. These are very, very, very nice cards. They're ones which attract a decent amount of value that a lot of people love. These are, frankly, a pretty big deal. So yeah, in terms of special illustration rares, this is a good set with a bunch of very collectible cards that people are going to be very, very interested in. And in terms of special illustration rares, there aren't that many. There's 7. There's 7 special illustration rares. So if you are lucky enough to pull one from one of your packs, you've got a decent chance of hitting the one you want, because there just generally aren't very many of them. Now, in terms of playability, it's a decent set as well. You've got your fringe cards, your rogue decks like Blastoise, for instance, and Wigglytuff, neither of which are particularly great, let's be clear. They've not proven themselves to be great, and frankly, at this stage, it's probably fair to assume they're not going to. They're not going to be big decks that are going to rule the metagame. But they're still kind of cool. But then we got the stuff that is great. We've got stuff like Zapdos, which is absolutely legit in Lightning decks, Miraidon decks, etc., which is awesome. We've got stuff like Mew, which is a phenomenal card, both in terms of the ability that lets you draw cards and the attack that lets you copy one of your opponent's attacks. It's finding its way into a million different decks in a million different ways, and this is really good. You got stuff like Erica's Invitation, which is proving to be a very nice supporter card for essentially allowing you to attack stuff that's in your opponent's hand. It's not a phenomenal set in terms of playability like we're going to see in a second with Paradox Rift, but there's enough stuff flicking around. But frankly, when it comes to 151, there's a fairly simple answer here. How is your nostalgia for Gen 1? If the answer is, you know what, I'm really nostalgic for Gen 1 is awesome, then yeah, this is a phenomenal set and you should be running to get it as fast as you can. If, however, you're not, nah. This really is a set for Gen 1 fanboys. Now, Paradox Rift comes along, and this is a big set. In terms of playability, in terms of shaping the metagame, Paradox Rift is phenomenal. It is the set we've been waiting for. It is a set that a lot of players, well, these are the sets we love. We don't get these all that often. It takes a while to get a set like this, but then eventually we do, and it turns the entire metagame on its head, and it makes players and casters and analysts very, very happy indeed. Because you've got stuff like Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant is a phenomenal card. It's being combined with Entei to make one of the best decks in the format. It drops 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon when it hits the active. It's awesome. Little decks, as in decks with lots of low HP Pokemon, really, really struggle when they come up against this because they just don't have a very good answer. Because their little evolving Pokemon end up being taken out before they get a chance to evolve. Because so much damage is being dropped so quickly, they just can't stand up to it. It's kind of funny. If you're the Iron Valiant player, it is much less funny if you are against Iron Valiant. We've got stuff like Roaring Moon, which is a phenomenal deck and just one-hit KO anything. And sure, there's questions about how it deals against single-prize decks and you need to keep recovering it, etc. But it's still an absolute top-tier deck, which is making a huge, huge impact in the metagame. We've got stuff like Clorf, which no one is going to pretend that Clorf is the best deck in the metagame, right? We're not. But 190, if you're affected by a special condition, yeah, we absolutely are going to pretend that this is a viable deck that people are using to success in big and large tournaments, because it is. It is that kind of deck. It is doing very, very nicely indeed. Clorf is not the best deck in the format, but Clorf is absolutely legit. We've got things like Scarlet, which again is more of a fringe deck, but it's one that lets you boost up the attacks of your Pokemon. It is seeing play, it is seeing success. We got stuff like Goldengo, which again is more of a second tier deck in terms of success so far, but it's got a draw ability and an attack that can KO basically anything. This is a set which is phenomenal. In terms of playability, it is making a huge impact in the metagame. And then you've got all of your trainer cards, of course, like your Counter Catcher and your Earthen Vessel and things like that. Turo is a great card. And this is just absolutely running away with the metagame. It is making a huge deal. Paradox Rift for players is amazing. In terms of value, in terms of collectability, in terms of the big cards in that regard, you've still got Roaring Moon, which is up there as like a $100 card, and Iron Valiant, which is somewhere around $70, and then they're not on the same level, but you've got cool stuff like Goldengo, like Parasol Lady, like Garchomp, all of which are decent cards. It's not there on the same level as 151, and I'm not going to pretend it is. But it is still a very, very nice set with some very, very cool cards in, and that is quite nice. If you're looking for a set which is going to get your nostalgia and get your collectability going, 151 is better than Paradox Rift. But if you want a set which is going to absolutely impact the metagame, oh yeah, no, Paradox Rift is the best we've had for a long time. So where does Paldean Fates fit in? Now, obviously, we don't have many English images here. I'm going to have to be showing you a lot of the Japanese cards here. But it's a very, very, very cool set. Now, in terms of playability, there's very few new cards in the set. There are some. You've got things like Iron Treads and Great Tusk that are actually new, never-before-seen cards, which are cool. We got that new TM that lets you do 180 damage from anything, which is awesome if your opponent's got one prize remaining, but it's still a pretty cool card. There are some cards out there, but they are few and far between. This is largely a reprint set. This is one that you are getting entirely for the secret rares. And you've got your regular shiny Pokemon, and some of your favourites there are going to be like your Charmander and your Pikachu. And these are extremely cool. There are 120 of them in the main set. So even if you pull a shiny, and you're going to be pulling a few shinies if you buy this set, you haven't got a great chance of pulling the one you want. You've got a less than 1% chance that the one you want is the one you actually pull. But there are so many of them that hopefully most of them are going to end up being really cheap on the secondary market. Except for Pikachu. Over in Japan, Pikachu is commanding a ridiculous price. Hopefully it'll be better over here, but I wouldn't expect it to be perfect. But we've got a bunch of these little shiny Pokemon. They're all adorable and amazing. You know, the Pawmi's one that I really like. It's going to be very, very cool. You've then got your EXs, and you're going to have stuff like Mew and Gardevoir, which are extremely cool. So you've got all of them coming in. Then you've got your special illustration rares, and again, the number here is actually quite small, so the chances of pulling the one you want is decent. You've got stuff like the second Akira Igawa Charizard. You've got stuff like the Mew, which is absolutely stunning. You've got a new Iono coming in, which is a really big deal that people are going to absolutely love. There's a new Penny coming in, which again is going to be a very big card. It is great for collectability, and it's going to have some high-value cards. Oh, and then we've got the gold cards. Have a look at Miraidon here as an example. They're decent cards. They're not game-breaking, but they are pretty decent cards. They're actually going to be a lot cheaper than some of the special illustration rares, but it's still nice that we're getting them in. And I think the niche that this set is really giving us is I want to pull a lot of cool stuff. Because this is going to be a special set where the pulls are going to be coming thick and fast, and they kind of have to be, given how many there are. There are a huge amount, and if you want to get a master set, if you want to get every card in the set, this is going to be a pain to do so. It's going to be one of these where actually pulling it off, getting the master set is a real pain, but if you get the master set, it's going to be so much cooler than a regular set, because it's so much more difficult to actually pull that off. And that's essentially where we are. 151 is hitting your nostalgia and it's got a couple of decent big value cards. Paradox Rift has again got a couple of decent big value cards, but it's really there for players. It is a set where you're going to be playing with a bunch of the cards that you pull. And then Shiny Treasures EX, which turns into Paldean Fates over here. That is there's lots of little cool stuff. I love it. Oh, and those shinies actually look amazing. There are again going to be a couple of big high value cards, and that is, like I keep saying, one of the things that all three of these sets have in common. But Shiny Treasures EX is a set where you want to be pulling all those little shinies. And if you do, there we go. I'm not sure there is an easy answer here. I'm not sure this is one of those times where you can look at all three of these sets and go, this is the best one. I really do think all three of the sets do have their own niches. And that's essentially where we come down. I don't think there is a great answer in that regard. I think it's just a case of, you know what? However you fall down here, that's what's going to end up being the best. So there we go. There's your answer. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a straight answer, but I really do think that it's different sets for different people. That's what I think, but I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourself till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.